And for the most part, it would be one of those situations where if
It's
the
Hal
spring offensive
Sparks.
wasn't coming up, there's an
on
argument that
with
we
Hal.
wouldn't have that much to talk about that we didn't talk about yesterday.
This morning.
But so much is changing so
Listening and
fast
playing
right now that there will be a lot.
And thank you, Hal Vickery. Hal Vickery gives us super chat
Lost
in
dog in my
spite
neighborhood.
of the nice things that he can't say.
Oh, that's good. Well, very seldom do people pay to shut themselves up. I think
right.
it's
So we
quite frankly
respect
a level of growth I will never show. That's right. So right now, I don't know how much you're aware of the current Sudan situation.
No,
Have you been following this?
Not
Okay,
really.
so last few days,
as I should be.
there was an attempt at a ceasefire. There's been an ongoing civil war in Sudan for a very long time. And in 2011, there was, this basically a dictator for life type takeover. And then in 2019, there was, in many ways, it's sort of the height of the Abrams Accord stuff that Trump was doing, because the Sudan was one of the countries on the list that was going to happen very quickly. It's going to be perfect. It's been an ongoing civil war for decades, which, by the way, resulted in Sudan becoming Sudan and South Sudan, which are two separate countries. And so bad in the country of Sudan that South Sudan, and this is kind of fascinating. So South Sudan voted to separate themselves from Sudan, and by 98%, like the public said, yeah, 98%, we're with you, out. We don't want any part of that. It's a mess. And South Sudan is now landlocked because of that. They gave up coastal area. They gave up access to the ocean in that separation. That's how bad. Do you have any idea how bad things have to be in an African country for you to give up coastline? Yeah, good Lord. So right now there's this. There are two guys.
Two guys.
We'll
guys.
Bring you up to speed as quickly as we can. There's Al Burhan, who's the general of the military, and he runs the army. And then there's this guy who everybody calls Hemeti, and he runs the they call it like the support force. It's really the rapid support force. It seems more like a rapid strike force, if you ask me. I like the idea of support, and I'm sure it made a lot of international, NGOs and other groups very comfortable when they named that group the Rapid Support Group, when it's indeed a rapid strike group, strike force. Anyways, so of civil wars, there have been myriad throughout the centuries. No continent is immune. And the definition of whether they're, civil or not, being that they are the same people, is the only thing that kind of keeps the Native American tribal wars, for example, being viewed as civil wars, because they are effectively separate tribes. But the idea is that they share the same land, or they did at one point, and then they stopped, which I think is kind of the kind of classical pre-nation state, international law idea of what Civil War was. Anyways, Hatfield and McCoy type stuff, I suppose, would qualify as well on a smaller scale, right? This is a lot closer to a Hatfield and McCoy situation, because these two guys were, basically first position, second position in the military that took over, that ousted the dictator. The dictator was ousted. I'm giving you the broad strokes because we got to catch up. But the dictator was ousted. There was a movement towards democracy. There has been one. The people themselves want it. They kind of, as bad as South Sudan has it on so many levels, they at least envy that aspect, that there's some element of that there. But these two guys have effectively, they were put sort of in charge, or took charge, to guarantee, control of the country until a interim democratic leadership could be appointed, which I know what you're thinking, as am I. You don't appoint democratic leadership, you elect them.
Right.
This is different, and you're absolutely right. And it is exactly why it failed. And these guys, and this will tie into some of the stuff we're dealing with as far as Russia and Ukraine as well, in that
Won't go
the
away.
question always comes in, once you get power in a situation like that, are you willing or able or averse to giving it up?
Right.
Are you going to have a George Washington moment where you go, all right, you know what? I'm tapping out. We don't need a longtime leader. I'm going back to being a farmer. You guys, pick somebody every 4 years, which is great and rare. But in the case of a country like this, your reasoning for why you would give up that power because of the power balance in that country is a lot thinner. There's a lot fewer reasons why you would step down in that situation, because there's too much upside and too much downside. Upside, you're a rich dictator who can basically kill any one of your rivals. Downside, you might be on the receiving end of some disgruntled citizens at a certain point. And you'll only have what semblance of law exists to protect you. So these guys aren't in a big hurry. But you would think, to some degree, that these guys, Al-Buhan and Hemedti would, be kind of comfortable in their number one, number two position. That eventually the number one guy might find himself being the military leader who becomes the president, and his number two becomes the head of the military or something like that. Well, you would think that. If there wasn't decades of civil war that you have to deal with on top of, the tribal strife and all kinds of other stuff, which people can work through, they can figure it out. But there's a big thumb on the scale in that Hemedti, who's the lower, power guy, he's running the kind of what would effectively be the rebel forces, except they are technically part of the government, is aligned with a Syrian military leader who is funded by Russia and is supported by the Wagner Group. And 4 days before the latest big attack that's led to all the bloodshed, a Russian airplane, like an Su-42, I believe it was, landed in Syria, or at the Syrian, just across the border in Syria, and interestingly enough, and this is all over social media throughout the Middle East, this plane took off from this base. This Russian plane flew in, landed there, took off, flew into Sudan, into Khartoum, the capital, and dropped off a bunch of stuff, and then flew out. And the Hemedti forces, the support forces, suddenly had a lot of ammunition, suddenly had a lot of weapons, and suddenly had a lot of Wagner support.
Wagner. Oh, lovely white supremacy.
Why, Johnny
support.
Million? Why? White
supremacy support. Yay. The Nazi support. That group that they're supposedly fighting.
Do I need to riff long enough for you to take a sip of
about projection.
delicious beverage?
Nope.
Wagner is the ultimate in projection.
Would it be something like they care about the governance of Sudan?
Oh, it's definitely altruistic.
Yeah, you think it's a charity thing on there? The Wagner
the
Group
greater
is basic.
good kind of vibe that you get.
Greater good is
total
from the Wagner Group.
It's because they've been trucking and training out gold out of the western part of Sudan nonstop during the conflict. And Hemedti basically seems to have an agreement with the Wagner Group and the Russians that he will effectively continue the chaos long enough for them to bug out with some of that stuff as long as he gets some. Now, the
gold?
Yeah, lots and lots of it.
Gold?
Now, they
really?
Sudan
gold.
is a very impoverished country.
Gold.
The gold they process and export for sale is a highly manipulated, highly corrupt practice. It's one of the reasons why it's basically a bank robbery that's going on with the Wagner Group and the Russians.
Wow.
It's one of the reasons why Prigozhin might be simply, sort of filling his bank account in his attempt to kill Putin at some point. It could be that shady because it's that kind of situation.
Oh.
When we come back, there have been 400 people as of current estimates killed in Sudan, including an American, and the White House is in the process of arranging for an evacuation of all U.S. embassy staff and any Americans who want to bug out. It's that bad. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Park Radio program.
I did not even know this. See, this is the problem with our media being all about
Hi, chat room.
Our system.
Gold commercial coming. Yeah, well, you won't. I have to say, the chat room's like, I feel a gold commercial coming on. I'm like, you know what? No.
Yeah, no.
And one of the reasons why not is because
Big Dick Pill.
No.
Ooh,
Big Dick Pill.
Never even had to stop on one of those ads.
But when you watch Alex Jones, it's always supplements.
That's right. Well, I fast forward past those parts. I get to the pancake batter, like the stuff where you're like, I don't know that. How much waffle mix?
The protein pancakes.
That keeps forever, right? Those are And it's funny, if you eat it, you don't get bloated and red and angry. It's weird. I don't understand.
The last clip I saw you working with of him it was this past week. He can kind of not talk anymore. What is happening?
Acid reflux. 100%.
Crazy.
Just horrible health, acid reflux.
60 seconds.
He's throwing up.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to pop, and he can't make S sounds anymore.
And he does that lifting thing that really heavy people will sometimes do when they've got, because he doesn't have fat, he has inflammation. I mean, he is fat too, but that's inflammation. When people have that, especially in their upper chest cavity, they do this like that, and it's why they're panicked all the friggin' time.
Yeah.
Because they can't breathe. Yeah, let me grab this. So,
what are we doing here? Let's see.
Yeah, he's got a bloody ulcer, exactly.
I'll leave this because this is Old Town. Let's leave that alone.
Like it, subscribe, give a thumbs up. Subscribe, we're so close to 50K.
50K. Oh, that's right, and subscribe to Johnny Million too. I'm at like 270.
There you go.
Ooh, nice.
You got 270 subscribers or followers?
10 seconds.
Both.
Subscribers.
Excellent.
You're locked into the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So in an attempt to try and stabilize what's going on in Sudan right now, the U.S. has formed what's called the Quad for Sudan, which is the U.S., U.K., Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And Sudan being largely Sunni Muslim, and this sort of back and forth between, dealing with the Wagner Group and others transporting Sudanese fighters to Yemen to fight on behalf of the Houthis in Yemen, and the idea that some of the reason why this is popping off is because the Saudi Arabia and the governing body of Yemen, who is not the Houthi rebels. The Houthi rebels are in the north, closer to the border of the Yemen war is really about this border area. It's very much like, in a much bigger scale, it's like the Moldovan region between, Ukraine and Moldova that Russia wants. It's the Houthis are like the Russians in that group, in that section.
Okay.
And then they want to spread both directions is the idea. And there's been a lot of pushback or whatever. But as soon as that started to, I guess the Saudis felt like they couldn't
my bus is going all
just
over
bash
the place
right through
that's
it.
usually the way buses actually end up
anybody
running.
who gets involved in a conflict, and don't ask me how I know this as an American, but oftentimes if you're not very careful in a situation, you can make more enemies and people who blame you for the conflict, even if you were there to help initially. So the Saudis found that out the hard way in their relation with the Yemeni government, and in sort of the brokered talks around Iran and all that stuff that Iraq has been doing, and the UN did, that China got credit for a month or so ago. The fighters that were Sudanese that were siphoned down there have started to return, I guess, which has also heightened the tensions initially. But the most bizarre thing about this entire situation, and again, it is breaking news at the current. It is a big deal. In any other situation where there wasn't something like the Ukraine war going on, this would be the primary news. This is
exactly.
This is Serbo-Croatian, Kosovo kind of stuff.
Correct.
This is this is absolutely, or Arab Spring or, Libya and Gaddafi level stuff as far as the conflict. It's been going on for a long time, but this current dust up is extremely bad. There are jet fighters bombing cities. And it's so off the radar for a lot of people. But it boils down to the personal relationship between this Al-Burhan guy and Hemeti. Like, they are, at one point, they're across the board. This is from Al Jazeera, UN, New York Times, various disparate groups of how this most recent fight started is because these guys who were working together to shepherd through, in theory, a democratic system in Sudan, got mad at each other over something.
I won.
Somebody was stepping on somebody's toes. Obviously, the Hemeti guy thought he was going to be sort of the head of the military, and everybody would just move up the ladder, and he wanted to be the number one guy. But there was a conversation about
there be anything
he shouldn't have a back channel to the civilian government once it's set up, because that's Al Burhan's job as the head of the army. And so he was like, "No, I want a red phone too." Was basically it, and they stopped talking to each other. This is from Axios' reading of it, but this is last week. The Sudanese source said the Quad for Sudan, which includes U.S., U.K., Saudi Arabia, and UAE, gave both sides a proposal. We were almost there. Blinken called Al-Burhan and urged him to resolve the final sticking point between them, reminding him of his commitment. But by then, the talks between the two generals had fallen apart, and both sides began to prepare for an armed confrontation. This is the disagreement was centered on the military chain of command that what it would look like in civilian-led Sudan. A senior U.S. official and Sudanese source told Axios. While Al-Burhan wanted to be the top military figure and the only one to report directly to the civilian government, Hemeti demanded to have his own direct channel to civilian leaders without having to go through the commander of the military, the senior U.S. official. That's what this is all about. This is about that foreign people have died in the last few days. They couldn't even hold a ceasefire during the Eid religious holiday, and there is no reason to expect that the truce, it failed to start with, and why this is going to stop anytime soon. Right now, it is a matter of just, we're in a refugee situation where people who had come from, surrounding countries into Sudan are now running out. And it will break over the next couple of few days and the next week or so. Like I said, the U.S., the U.K., the UAE, and Saudi Arabia are all trying to tamp down the violence and get it settled again. But in the middle of all this, in throwing a monkey wrench in the entire system, is arms shipments from the Russians flown in directly from Bashar al-Assad's Syria, and a governor who believes that ultimately the result of this will be a split, just like last time, where we have a South Sudan, and then Sudan becomes East and West Sudan, with the West being the valuable part as far as shipping, and the East being the valuable part as far as shipping and supplies and other stuff, and the East being valuable for simply its mineral rights and the gold, which is the part that Russia and this warlord in eastern Syria wants to take over. There is,
I'm going to end up using.
When I talk about the China issue with folks on my regular live stream, and we discussed it here a few times, there is a war over who is going to carve up Africa, and the aversion of
and not good,
and anger, and especially in the case of
the colonization
like
is
Exxon
just
and others,
really not good.
The absolutely reasonable aversion to multinational corporations, U.S. and U.K. centered ones like BP and the like, especially around oil, and the damage they've done in Africa, and our kind of collective shame and aggravation at it, and their attempts to greenwash themselves as they
in the Middle
transfer
East
into being renewable transmission companies, as opposed to transmitting energy from one place to another, as opposed to digging it up out of the ground and setting fire to it. Our aversion to that is keeping us 5 steps back from our involvement in Africa, because the idea is it's always imperialism. If we go there,
exactly.
If UN troops are there or US troops are there, the only reason we're there is so that we can
take over.
set up a Starbucks and kill everybody. And because that's the generalized feeling, it is.
Sorry,
I mean, look at
It
Harlem
is an
Pit.
awful business plan, by the way.
It's terrible. It doesn't work
That's
very
true.
well at
Setting
all.
up
Who
a
are you going to sell the
Starbucks and
coffee
then
to?
killing everybody?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and moving your own people in is the idea.
That's the problem. Is you're
Or what have
moving
you, or like a new
the
version of South
native
Africa.
people out, and you move your
The problem
people in.
with that feeling
the problem
is that while things that America has done in the past, and especially I would argue UK and BP or multinational corporations in the past have done, and our reliance on oil has made us kind of tiptoe backwards from going after them as much as we could. Because again, one of the reasons why the BP head after the Gulf oil spill said he just wants his life back and he doesn't know what the big deal is, because the head of Exxon, hangs out with that dude, and Exxon dumped that amount of oil into the Nile and the Congo.
Yep, and without getting anything done to them, because
so he's like,
I don't
know, it's a giant body of water. What's the big deal? That's why he feels that way, because his direct competitors have been poisoning, African rivers and streams for decades. That said, because of our, reticence post-Iraq War, post-Vietnam, and pick your poison, the two groups that are stepping in Africa the most are the Chinese and the Russians. And in the case of the Russians, it's almost solely the Wagner Group. Wagner Group is a private military organization, and they work in lockstep with the Russian government, and they sort of clear the brush. They come in and make the ground ripe and desperate for Russia to cede whatever industry or take what they want. And it's been horrifyingly scary. And again, I've referenced this before, but the stories of what the Wagner Group did in Somalia and Sierra Leone and other places to clear the way for their the mineral
disgusting.
Stuff that they needed
made it into Hollywood.
Some of the most horrifying.
But then again, in Hollywood, they made it into a movie and not
I would
really
argue
a
the Holocaust
documentary
and the rape of Nanjing.
Oh, wow.
It is on scale with that kind of behavior. It is not on volume, which is partly why it's gone by in the background. The other part is, of course, the combination of the Chinese debt trap, which is the BRI. They're, in the case of when the IMF or the U.S. through our foreign aid or anybody else, when we pay to help a country do infrastructure, we loan them money. Absolutely, we expect to be paid back with interest at some point, because that's the point of a loan. And a lot of times we've restructured those loans so many times that they're almost useless. However, at no point, even when we bring in, we go, all right, we'll set up a system for you or help set up a system for you, but we've got to have some oversight on the ground to make sure that's where it goes. We're not just going to give you a blank check, because it always ends up someplace terrible. So we're going to send some engineers or that kind of stuff in to help you make sure that, basically audit the loan in that regard. Make sure it's going to be continuing ongoing payments, because it's in our budget that way. We budgeted it out over 5 years or what have you.
All right.
The Chinese don't do that.
One little thing.
They loan the money, and then they have Chinese contractors and Chinese employees, Chinese citizens, enter the country and build it and pay themselves to do the work.
Yes. And will displace the people that are there.
The local economy is terrible.
Right.
Because they end up indebted with a bridge that is half built by people who never made any money that they were intending to keep in the country. And this is a constant, ongoing problem. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program,
Mega Worldwide.
CPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Thank you, Hal.
Got to bring it domestic right after this one. There's just so much stuff to cover.
So much. I was blown away by the Supreme Court decision.
Yes. Yeah, that's literally what I'm clicking on right now. Openly.
You mind if I noodle when we come back?
Not at all.
Oh boy. Okay. My
I got headphones on headphones.
Right. Sounds painful.
Hurts a little.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it?
Yes, I do.
Woo-woo.
Okay.
Man, oh Shevitz.
I want to put.
Moon River.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So Rich, my headphones got headphones. Oh, was it loud, Hal Vickery?
The guitar or?
Oh.
Yeah, I think the guitar.
60 seconds.
Okay, hold on.
Alternative facts.
Moon River.
Did you actually hear it?
I heard that, yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, good.
Computer says no. Computer says yes.
You know, I activated this extension in Twitch that had some sound effects and things,
Yes.
and I decided that I didn't like the interface, so I deactivated it, and it won't fucking go away.
Oh no.
Like it's got all these like empty windows of like people are spending their channel points trying to make sounds that don't work. So I'm trying to undo that. So did you hear I saw King's X over the weekend?
Yes, I did. We saw the
Okay,
picture.
so that
You sent
one's
me the
working.
picture. You guys did.
It was so nuts.
It's lovely.
Ty, who
10
might be
seconds.
listening right now, yelled my name from the stage, and I thought I was going to shit my pants.
Well, don't you usually though?
Yeah, but not that early in the night.
Time constraints. All the creativity has been removed from the Hell Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide Bumpers.
And I'm here to prove it.
Now welcome back to the Hell Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
Go for it, Johnny Million. That's pretty loud.
Got my crazy bright lime green something or other. I do have a YouTube channel.
He does.
I'm going to put
Check this out, Hal.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know. I'm trying to build up a little money, but I
Oh,
keep
look at that. He got
spending
his
hard.
The
he got his
Vinnie
whammy
Vincent
bar.
card?
Yep. It's one of my favorite little tricks. It really
Do I
is.
want to do that there, or do I want to do that?
So come, there's so much more.
There is. So check out his Twitch channel.
Then we
It's
got there.
Johnny
But
Million.
Do I need
It's Johnny Million.
It's Johnny Million. Same on
Twitch.
YouTube. It's Johnny Million.
That's right. Excellent.
Those are doing
and
okay.
it's a useful transition musically to get us into.
Yes, I got a lot of people coming in for the
cheerier mood
universities.
to some degree because of a particular story that's coming up, which I'm very I think we're all relieved about, is that the Supreme Court stayed a motion by a lower court.
The Fifth Circuit,
The availability of mifepristone,
which it's going back to
for
right
people
now.
who are seeking a medical abortion. So people still have access to it. And by the way, this is how it's going to work out. I would like to say, for the record, this will, even after they hear it, even with all the Amy Coney Barrett and all those folks, it
Probably.
they
Yeah,
are going.
I agree.
One of the things they did about kicking it back to the states is that you can't overrule the federal system. One of their things about their decision was that they were distinctly using, the federal versus state, states' rights concept to allow people to,
Yep.
culturally make decisions within their state about certain important issues.
Correct.
However, that also,
and this is a big however.
I think, that's in place, at least a relative precedent in their own heads, that in the same, it's AB logic being what it is, that a state cannot change an outcome from the federal government
Correct.
that it is effectively under, like the
Correct,
FDA.
correct,
The
correct.
state, any individual state cannot override what the federal government says, since the federal government reaches its decisions and its people are
Yep,
appointed
because
by
I'm
the
supposed to be able to
country
talk
as
over
a
him.
whole. So you can never have
Him to
one
go down
single
a little.
state that just, because the slippery slope on something like that is ridiculous. It's, it's an absurdity. you can set up a thing in your state where you can try your best to ignore it, and you can live the ramifications of whatever changes you want to make. That you think, well, that's too much power for the government to have. Therefore, in our state, you can do this, where you might not be able to do it anywhere else.
The game. Actually, I'm going to lower it a lot too.
What, assisted suicide, something like that? If they
Washington
State.
In the chat, Howler's saying that the SCOTUS decision is only temporary.
No, it is only temporary.
It's a temporary, right?
Right.
But ultimately, what I'm saying is the way they're going to rule
when it comes back,
I predict,
right,
is based on favorability to business and the function of federal government. Because if they offer up a situation, if they create a precedent themselves, if the SCOTUS creates a precedent where any particular state can override a federal program for the rest of the states without due representation across the rest of the country,
correct,
you're basically creating a setup where we have taxation without representation, because because Texas gets to call the shots
for
the
everything,
and that's never going to
for everything through the court system.
But you know what? I think Florida. I think they've got a real knack for where the country's heading.
You think
being old and dead
I think
in 20 years?
Essentially, where just being is illegal and dressing as the opposite sex is punishable by death. By a simple majority.
Nuts.
Well,
they're just a little weird.
Yeah, but these are people who smoke meth while trying to mouth sex an alligator. So I think ultimately, by the time you get to things that are going to wipe you out in Florida, it's way down on the list. It's like number 65.
It's like Australia.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
LM just hit us with a crazy generous super chat. And his profile picture
because I don't like these roundabouts.
Cat, so
they don't always work.
We already care about them. Thank you, LM. Oh my gosh, bless you. And we got 1,300 people in the chat in YouTube alone.
And LM's last name? NOP.
Because they don't always
absolutely
work. They work for about a minute,
we're down with NOP.
and then they just stop working.
So
yeah, you know me.
Right. So the and by the way, a lot of what
get down with OPP.
Enough, is going on in Florida is the act of Ron DeSantis trying to out-Trump Trump.
And he's not running for president, not yet.
And it's not working.
It's
not working.
Book tour.
Right. And
whole state flood.
Hey, if it worked for Rick Santorum, whatever you do, don't Google it.
Please don't Google it.
But the
oh boy.
Yeah. So that stay, yes, it's temporary, but the slippery slope aspect of it, of a single state being able to define for everyone else that and setting what could be a national standard by overriding it for everyone else.
Right.
Is the issue, and because we all use the mail system, they're trying to do this thing where you can't mail something into the state individually that you can mail into other states, and as a whole.
MALE, the mail system.
No. Well, I guess that qualifies. Although, quite frankly, a huge moving force in the anti-choice movement is these relatively well-to-do, bordering on senior citizen ladies that we see at all these events. They are the screaming driving force behind this.
Why? Oh, it's one way.
And we know that in many ways they're the bigger motivators in some cases, because the men that support it have themselves paid for abortions, like Trump and multiple members.
Is so distressing. It's the absolute epitome of I've got mine, so never mind.
Now screw you. Now screw you.
Anymore.
Not even.
So
I've got mine.
Decisions for everybody else.
Like I got my screw you
based on how they feel about or what they regret earlier in their life or anything.
Right. Well, and it also means the I guess it wouldn't stop them from saying nanny state all the time, because that's effectively what we're talking about.
I used to call my grandmother nanny.
Did you? All right.
Yeah, then she died.
No, oh, right. I thought you just meant as part of like nanny, but like
no.
Never mind. So the point I'm trying to make is that this system is not going to work. They are just trying to find weak points to eliminate the ability for women to have an abortion in the United States by any means necessary. So they are going to short of simply, I guess, wiping them all out. Or eventually, because they've already talked about it. Trump said in 2015 and 2016, he said that he believes there should be a punishment for a woman who has an abortion. He said it on television. He's still progressive, stayed home, and a bunch of Republicans voted for him. And he put in Amy Coney Barrett, and he put in Kavanaugh for this job. Now, they're not going to take the bait on all of them. They're not. There is no. Don't think for a second that because they put a stay on this, that a temporary hold on it, and that they're going to rule that it doesn't work and it won't be valuable because of the amount of business it would destroy in the country. They're going to wait for another bite at the apple. Just saying. And good. Like, there's so much stuff going on. And I don't even have time for all the stories. There, a couple things. Okay. A couple of white supremacists, by the way, got busted this week, got arrested.
I love that for them. What'd they do?
They were planning on attacking power grids. There was a whole big, remember that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
The weird sort of QAnon. And one of them, let's see, it was Christopher Cook of Ohio and Jonathan Frost of Texas and Indiana. Ooh. He moves around a lot. He was couch surfing. Were charged with connection with purported plot to support those attacking the grid. Each of the two defendants pleaded guilty to one count of conspiring to provide material support to terrorists. Cook got 92 months in prison. Frost was ordered to spend just 60 months in prison because they took a guilty plea, and they charged this other guy, Jackson Sowell of Wisconsin, who pleaded guilty last year, and he'll be sentenced at a later date. He's going to get the
wrong area.
They were helping him. They turned on him, pleaded guilty, and he was the guy who was actually going to carry it out.
So, are any of these were any of these people trans people,
put a new camera.
or like performing in drag?
Was that one another
I don't think so.
Okay,
pretty
just
much.
checking.
Yeah.
When I hear about terrorism, I'm expecting a certain demographic of LGBTQ, any kind of left-wing activism.
Well, yeah, and especially if they're going to do something big, if they're planning a giant terrorist act, they're going to do it on important dates. Like Dame Edna has passed. I don't know if that's true.
Wait, what?
For real, the comedian that created the character Dame Edna, he passed away, I think, last night.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Oh. He's an old person.
Yes, I know.
He's an old dude. Yeah.
Yes.
And
his wife's doing.
There is one piece of good
didn't he just recently get divorced?
Can I do one piece of good gun news?
Good gun news? Bring
yes. Smart guns are going on sale.
Yay! Finally.
Which use thumb or facial recognition. This one in particular uses facial recognition, that the only person that can shoot it is the person who is coded to it. There was a big push by the NRA to stop these weapons because the fear of a gun that is stolen and taken away is one of the reasons why people buy two guns.
Correct.
And so as a lobbying group for the gun sales industry, one of the things they have been pushing back against for a very long time is any kind of gun that tracks the user and how they used it. Now, if you got a concealed carry and you're the good guy with the gun, I don't know what your problem is.
That's me.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
You're a terrible person, and you don't have a gun.
I held one handgun once, and it was so heavy I freaked out and put it down and was like, "Yeah, that's enough."
You're a shredder, not a fighter.
I'm a shredder, not a shooter.
Yeah, right. And anyways, this is a big deal, specifically for the reason that the NRA has been fighting these things. It was I believe a gun shop in New Jersey that was going to sell fingerprint coded smart guns, and the NRA shut them down. There's this big conspiracy theory about them.
That is nuts.
Yes.
No, we need anybody to be able to shoot that gun.
Right, exactly.
Anybody who finds it, they've got to be able to go off.
Right. And I personally think,
I know I like the fact that these will be smart guns. They can only be fired by the
maybe owner. It's if you're going through hell, keep going. The idea that at some point, smart guns where you track who uses it and why will keep some people from
not everyone
gathering new ones, and and anybody who has a new gun at some point will have a gun that if you use it, we know you used it and only you used it, and that in and of itself would be a huge leap forward in the argument of who are the good guys with the guns and who are the bad guys with the guns. Okay, cool. We can figure out a way to stop the bad
guy.
You good? Okay, you've already signed off. We're fingerprinting you every time you fire the damn thing. So,
so if you're the good guy with a gun, then you're cool with this.
What are you worried about?
Thank you. Exactly, but that's the problem.
And the idea is that they believe
for
that
some
the
reason they
have
don't
like a satellite that will shut off
it's
all
going
the
to track
smart
you.
guns
It's
and
going to be
won't
able to
fire
and they can
right
shut
when
it off. The
you
government
shot.
can shut your gun off.
News for you, buddy.
No.
They don't need that kind of stuff. They have microwave rays they can point at a crowd and melt everybody's innards. Nobody, like it. If it comes that way, it's not going to look like
ain't gonna be that
what
way.
the heck? Like a broken flashlight in a horror film. It's going to be way bigger and way more permanent. And again, why would you bother? Why?
Why bother?
Why bother? Anyways, we'll be back right after this. House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Margaret?
Thank you. Thank you. It's just like, why are you people thinking this way? It's not making sense.
I know. Fantastic. I was collecting stories last night, and I swear to God, I was like, each of these stories, I if I talked about them for 3 minutes, I would never get them in because there's so much shit going on. Next one that kind of lead us in. Oh, there's a follow up. You remember the story about James Gordon Meek, the ABC reporter? They raided his house, and everybody's like, they raided it. The Biden administration is raiding a journalist who has classified information because he's the next Snowden. And it turned out he had child porn on all of his stuff. Yeah.
That's such a bad look.
It's a real bad look. They were like
there's no recovering from it.
But they do all the
and
time.
He was trying
rake step. Let's rake step.
Though, because Scott Ritter is
let
all
them eat
over
rake.
the Hanky broadcast, and that
let them eat rake.
2 years for propositioning a police officer that he thought was a 15-year-old girl.
Let them eat rake.
And again, lived in Russia for 6 years. I don't know. I do not know.
Let them eat rake.
You can't find anybody else. You can't Tankies. You can't find anybody else.
Let them eat rake.
No, he's
anybody.
the most talented. It's a meritocracy.
I want something like
he's just the best at
he's just so good that
he's so good at being wrong.
Pedophilia.
He's so good at everything he says not actually coming to fruition. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, ugh.
We're 20 seconds away.
Thank you.
From what?
The fun.
Mm-hmm.
Good answer.
It is a good answer.
The fun. Woohoo! That was good. From what? The fun.
Just so you know, I'm still here.
Oh.
Buttery.
Buttery indeed.
Buttery!
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Appreciate it.
Woohoo!
Let's get back to House Sparks radio program,
Mega Worldwide.
Oh, it's such a...
Love him.
There's so much going on.
Okay.
Let me do it. Look,
now, what am I going to put?
That it kind of grabs a hold of your brain and sets it on fire. First of all, okay, a Bellingcat reporter has been arrested in absentia in Moscow, meaning that
in Moscow.
An arrest warrant. That's how they do it there, because they're just not. They're on the journalism beat now.
I have
That's
to figure out how
like
to use
Russia's found its sweet spot. They're just going to arrest.
See, I have no problem doing this because there's a golf course over by where I live, or over by between me and my old job.
Shara, the guy who
that has been under construction for 2.5 years.
Turns out he's been leaking stuff for a lot longer, and posted a message.
It's a good course too.
The day that he got busted, saying, guys, I don't feel like I'm gonna just put out documents anymore, because apparently.
You know what? I'm so over this. I think people are on to me.
Yes, right. There's a knock at the door, and somebody at the one of the guys that may have been helping me a little or looking the other way has started looking at me funny.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and
he's gone away for a long time.
A long time, because it was all slapdash. There is no. Don't anybody think for a second that this is like. He was revealing the U.S. corruption or violent acts by the military, anything even close to stuff that, has come out because of, Reality Winner or Chelsea Manning or any of that stuff. No, this isn't any of that. He was just being a lazy moron, just putting stuff out for like lulls and cred in a gamer chat. That's it.
I guess if I did it, but no, even that.
Let's see. Let's see. I want to grab one. I feel like I want to do. Okay, so there's a story about Apple. And we've been talking about them extracting themselves from China. They're moving their entire MacBook factory out of China and into Vietnam.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. They're building a $120 million new plant where they're going to have it assembled in Vietnam. That's already
now that
happening.
they need to be as diverse as possible.
Sounds
as far as
brilliant. There's a Harvard scientist, a chemist specifically, who was arrested because he was giving secrets to the Chinese.
Yep.
And he's trying to get out of. Yeah, he's trying to get out of out of jail time right now. Larry Summers says the story about the dollar's dominance waning and blah 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 is ridiculous, and he used to work in the White House, and I love it when people who actually have seen the economic data that only people in the White House can see, and they start telling you what I've been telling you for months.
Thank you.
Israel is worried about the Sudan unrest because they think it will spill over, obviously, and cause more unrest in Syria. Blah blah blah. And James Gordon Meeks, some people will recall, the ABC news reporter who quit mysteriously and then had his door beat down by the FBI and was taken into custody. And at the time, Fox News and others were saying, "Oh my God, the Biden administration is rounding up journalists." There was rumors that he had classified documents on his laptop, and this is it. This is the authoritarianism. Here it comes. This is the tyranny of big government. Agenda 21. Agenda 21. Turns out he had child porn on every device in his home, and he was contacting a 16-year-old girl who is now a witness against him in court. An actual, because when Scott Ritter, the tanky's favorite, Russia whisperer, when he got busted, he was trying to canoodle with a 15-year-old, and it turned out to be a police officer, and he did 2 years for that. I gotta say, I think you got to do more time than that. I
agree.
If you're trying to pick up a child, a minor, I gotta say, we need some minimum sentencing on that stuff, because these guys don't tend to learn their lesson. And the idea that they could get another bite at the apple 2 years later is, it's grotesque. It's grotesque. Anyways, so he apparently...
I guess I could just put a park in here.
They now have the primary witness against him is this 16-year-old girl who is going under the name Minor Child 1 in the court documents. Even talking about this story makes my skin crawl. And the way that the right, because Biden's president while this guy was arrested. And by the way, do you think he gathered all this stuff magically in the first 6 months of the Biden administration, or do you think this is a lifelong habit? And that they finally caught this creep, right? Anyways, that's pretty horrifying. But on top of that, I mean, that's all chump change. All that story, blah blah blah. The big story, the biggest story of all. Donald Trump calls the Wall Street Journal a globalist-inspired paper and says that they're the worst because they printed a poll, which is accurate.
A poll.
It shows
he doesn't.
He is leading in the Republican primary.
Okay.
But Republicans themselves think DeSantis has a better chance of beating Biden than he does.
Of course they do.
Oh, you don't. Well, how dare you? How dare you? According to the poll
Tell the truth.
On Friday, the poll finds a number of advantages for Mr. DeSantis in the contest. He carries a more positive image than Trump, with 84% viewing him favorably compared to 78% who say that of Trump. 41% of GOP primary voters say DeSantis would have a better chance of beating Biden, while 31% say Trump would. Which, by the way, that means 30% are either talking about other people or don't think either one of them has a shot. That's great. That's magic. That, in turn, led Trump to lash out from Truth Social.
He's Centru.
In the polls, I am beat Biden everywhere.
I am beat Biden everywhere.
I am beat Biden everywhere. Yes.
You and me both, pal.
Yeah, seriously. By a lot, except in the globalist-inspired Wall Street Journal, one of the worst and most partisan media outlets anywhere. This is Rupert Murdoch's business newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. What? This bizarre attempt to everyman blue collar himself is hilarious and pathetic. Obviously.
Thank you, but it's worked before. I just don't because, like I said, white supremacy
New York City,
kicks all that butt. It just does because he's just hateful and white supremacist enough.
Look how
everybody's like, hey, forgive him.
Dad stuff,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, he's white supremacist.
But the idea that he's attacking the Wall Street Journal, can I just say, is delicious. I think that's awesome.
Where else is he there? Who's going to be in his corner aside from the National Enquirer?
Right.
And the National Enquirer is not owned by that family anymore, is it?
Lee County Republican Party dinner that he was at, because
he part of the reason Pecker's actually being
person rallies is now sort of headlining the Lee County Republican Party thing, and only because he went on later than Tucker Carlson, who people were more enthused to see, apparently. But this is a guy who, at events like that, when the only people covering it, news-wise, are RSBN.
I love the fact
home
that
of
I put a parking
Marjorie Taylor Greene's current
lot in
side
there,
piece.
See if it gets filled. The parking lot's filled up, and it's just a
maybe,
little park. It's not
like his own. Well, his own campaign cameras. That's the other thing. The majority of these things are his own campaign cameras. Then RSBN. Then perhaps the local news might be there because he's in a particular place and they send somebody down with a camera to just film it. In case anything happens, it happened right here in Washoe County. You know what I mean? So that's it. That's the only people there. CNN's not there. MSNBC isn't there. They'll buy a feed from somebody else if they want it later, but it's a mess. Nobody is sending anybody. They sent it down to Waco because it was insane. It was news like a slow-speed chase. But they're not sending people to a Lee County Republican dinner to watch this idiot say the same stuff over and over.
Over and over.
From the stage, oh, look at all the fake news back there. I'm like, dude, it's your campaign, your friends, and some local camera dude who's paid an hourly wage to film it on behalf of, WWAX, Fort Myers, Action News Team. It's so pitiful. We got to take a break. When we come back, Philip Bittner will be joining us live from Kiev, and I believe that's where he is. He moves around a lot these days. We'll have to find out. We'll be back. Yep.
Actually, I'm going to say it's companies that have been hired to do live streams. There are companies like mine who get hired to do these live streams by these companies that we don't know. All we know is we're going to get this set up, we're going to get this amount, and we're going to get da-da-da. And when we don't know who it's for sometimes because they kind of you tend to find out that it's for these kind of things. Where, you're going to be doing da-da-da-da, but see, you've already signed the contract and all, so you have to sit there in the back and actually live stream it. And as long as they have all the stuff that you put into the contract where they have their prerequisites of the space and the URL and all that shit, you're stuck in the back. So you could be that camera, which is very annoying.
Link. Work. Sound good? There was a little bit
There's a little bit of reverb.
Yes, a little bit.
A little echo.
That's me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm built
Trump is a racist. We all know.
Crack, so forgive me for a moment. And
right.
Millions. Uh-huh.
Reverb seems to be
We
less.
are about to take off.
Uh-huh.
The number you have reached,
There was
911, has been changed
like a slap
to a
back
non-published number.
I'm not quite sure where that came from. How about here? Check. Can you hear me, Johnny Million? Everything? Excellent. Okay, cool. Hopefully. You hear you? Weird. Check again.
Because I could do 1, 2, 3. I wish I had.
Huh. No, you're all in the same thing. Oh, I see. Wait 1 second. There we go. I think. I heard that. There we go. This. And then, all right.
I'm hearing you twice as well.
It'll remedy in a second.
Okay.
I think. It takes a moment for it to wear out. Like it's got to get through the system and loop back because of the time. So, and then I even made a, look at this. Transition button. Very excited. Look at that. What's happening?
Hey, there I am.
Hey, look at that. And then we get out of studio.
And no echo. Even better.
Yeah. I think it might be when I'm in studio mode that it uses multiple sources audio-wise. You can hear what's going on and what's going to be going on. If that makes any sense? Doesn't to me. Enoch Chuck. All right, here we go.
Enoch Chuck.
I saved the town anyway. I saved the town, and I thought a coffee would be nice. And I filled it on my lap. Hot coffee lap.
What's Malcolm put out?
Let's all go to the mountain. Hold on 1 second. Blink.
Blink.
Bye. Oh, I hear him. Bye. On camera. I won't be able to use my other stuff if it's still in there. I'll be back in a second. You're fine.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. And Connie Kelly wants to know what times will work for you.
Oh, hi. Huh? For me?
I'm once again playing Connie's personal assistant.
8 hours ahead, I believe. I believe I'm 8 hours ahead of Connie, so...
Gotcha.
We're back in 20.
Thank you.
Oh, and I hear Chicago. Hello, Chicago.
Look at that.
Hey, Philip.
Hey.
Cool.
You need me to answer your emails for you, Phil? I'm good at it.
What do you charge?
I know the best answers.
I know the best. Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
I got all the best answers.
Mm-hmm.
Had people walk out of me before, but not when.
Being so charming.
Video streaming at housefarms.com. I don't care for you if it a puke or sludge you're troweling out.
Go into the clinic multiple times to get that drug. So, as I said...
Welcome back. Philip Bittner joins us for hour 2 today. Very exciting. Glad to have him here.
Yep.
How you doing, sir?
Good, thank you. Lovely day, thank you.
We need
all right
on. Beautiful sunny spring day, so...
Well, that's it brings us to the possibility of the spring offensive, which I think is...
That's right.
Yes. And one of the stories that I was reading a commentary in the Telegraph, that this was the title was, Ukraine can take Crimea within months if we let it. There is no need for a diplomatic solution. Russia's war could soon be brought to a humiliating end. This is Ben Hodges writing this.
I love General Hodges. I truly do. He's an amazing American officer, and I hope he's right. I hope he's right. He is he's very supportive of Ukraine. I genuinely hope he's right. I think Crimea is problematic. Look, we're going to have to wait to see what happens when the offensive starts. And we're going to have to see how the Russians respond. And we're going to have to see, how well the Ukrainians have planned this out. I mean, judging by their last offensive where they took Kherson and Kharkiv back,
right?
There's a high possibility they might be able to make
the
real significant gains. But it also depends on the morale and the organization of Russian troops. But Ben Hodges, I've known Ben Hodges for easily 20 years, and he is an interesting fella.
Well, curiously
And I
enough,
hope he's right.
he has a 3-point plan to take Crimea. This is, he goes, he pushed the first task, isolating Crimea. Achieved imminently with the success of a Ukrainian offensive beginning in the summer. Kiev's forces can easily break the Russian-occupied land bridge. The second task is to make Crimea untenable for Russian forces. This can be done with long-range precision missiles provided by the West, targeting Sevastopol Navy Base and the dozen other so bases, places like Saki, and the logistics hub at Jankui, and the main Russian headquarters at Henichesk. Yeah. The final task would be to liberate Crimea itself, occupy the peninsula, and complete the destruction of the Kerch Bridge connecting it to Russia. This is his basically, strangle, squeeze, and cut off. And they're, basically treat the Russians that are in Crimea like a tumor. You basically tie off the ends of it and let it die naturally, and shrink, and then make sure that there's no pathway for it to regrow.
We don't need this stinking shit no more.
Yeah, I mean, I might be repeating myself here, and forgive me if I am, for those who have followed along with us for the last 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the reason for this war is because Crimea is it is not independently sustainable, and the Russians have a major military base there. It's the base of one of their a full quarter of their navy is based out of Sevastopol on the peninsula. But the Crimean Peninsula cannot be maintained or sustained without outside help. Mostly it's fresh water.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the reason why, a primary reason, there's no one single reason for this war, but there's a huge part of this war is maintaining Crimea. So the Russians have wanted to get a strip of land from mainland Russia going down along the coastline and connecting with the Crimean Peninsula so that they can deliver food and water and all that stuff and resupply their naval ships and all that kind of stuff. And the bridge is not sufficient. The bridge is not going to do it. So Hodges is right. That if you cut off the land bridge, Crimea will not be sustainable.
Right.
And you can like an old style siege, you can let them run out of food and water and get to a point of desperation where it's a negotiating point, or look, we don't know what that kind of scenario is going to look like, but you can easily cut off Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
Hodges is right there.
And
now the big question is how that's going to roll out. How that's going to happen. So.
Well, I mean, I've said, I've said that there's a strategic belief in Russia that Crimea gets lost if they bifurcate the Donbass anyway. So that's why fighting in Bakhmut has become such a thing, because if that gets split into two, the southern part of it falls faster than the northern part because of its connection to Russia and Belarus. And then Crimea is next, and they kind of know that, so they're trying to keep that whole thing together, but they don't have the resources to do it. They're just spending ammo and human lives doing it. The other big story I think that we've been talking about is, of course, the idea that France was playing footsie with China and was, and by the way, a misreading of the actual words said by Macron, which was, we're not supporting Ukraine and supporting their independence and stuff because the U.S. is telling us to. Europe makes its own decisions for how it's going to behave, and we're not a puppet, is effectively what he was saying to the Chinese government. A lot of people took that as, we may go our own way on this or decide to go a different way than America because America is supporting the Ukrainians, so there might be an option for us. That's not at all what was said. And what's weird is the only people who seemed to believe it on the diplomatic level were the Chinese, where the ambassador to Crimea, the Chinese ambassador to France.
Chinese ambassador to Paris.
Yes. He apparently thought it meant what the English translation and a bunch of the other kind of semi-pro Russia crowd said, that France was backing away from its support of Ukraine and backing away from its support of the United States, when that wasn't the case at all. And so he opened his mouth and blabbed and said, none of the former Soviet nations are recognized universally, by the international community as countries, which is garbage, by the way. It's like repeated situations where, all of our NATO allies, the EU, everybody, they recognize that Ukraine is its own country, has multiple times. But the idea is that they were never in on it because why would they be back in, 1998? They had bigger fish to fry. The Chinese were never part of that recognition. So their argument is that none of these countries really exist. And if Russia wants them back, it's kind of like us wanting, Taiwan back. It's exactly the same. And that set off a firestorm across all of the former Soviet satellite states, because the idea was like, we'll help Russia get you back to being puppets of them, if not totally under their control. Especially as China's been trying to make deals with Kazakhstan and Dagestan and Georgia and all these countries. It's a really stupid thing to say, and the timing was horrible. So that said, my curiosity is what's the feeling in Ukraine right now as far as world support for what's going on, and is it really like we know the tanks are coming, so we're just waiting, or we know the offensive's coming, so we're just waiting, and the rest of this stuff is just blather?
Well, you're asking me that question the day after the Ramstein summit at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, where the defense ministers of pretty much everybody in NATO was there, and sidebar communications were going on with international representatives nonstop. It's huge.
I'm not sure why that's national news, but okay.
People that I am in communication with,
the 24-hour news cycle just really blows my mind as to what we consider national news.
They've been getting. So, this China France thing, it's something in the news cycle that will come and go. France is not going to abandon Ukraine. The European Union might have an agenda that maybe Kiev will have to work out with Brussels. Individual nation states within the EU, they might have to negotiate and talk about. I mean, Hungary has its own kind of thing going on with Orban. Of course, the Baltic states and Germany has its interests, and the UK and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I think Ukrainians do know that the world, by and large, supports them because they can see what Russia is up to. It's despite all the conspiracy theories and the protestations coming out of Moscow, the world doesn't support. But the vast majority of the world does not support what Russia has done. And they can say what they want, but the support is still there.
Yep. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I asked the question that I think everybody's wondering. What happens if Russia runs out of vodka?
Oh, my.
That's a real thing. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Now with 100% more Johnny Million. It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch. And of course, just Hal Sparks. Just me.
Okay. And on this show.
When it does that.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why people know who I am.
That's true. There you go.
Because I'm just going to use
under there. It's not overlapping. My aesthetic issues are bothering me because I'm building this on the fly. There you go. Much better. And hi, chat room. Get your questions ready because I'm going to ask you guys in a second. Yeah, there was an idea that I guess Putin wasn't drinking for a very long time. He was different from the other leaders. Maybe just didn't, maybe it was pre-COVID or around COVID where he was worried about his health, so he stopped drinking. That stopped apparently. And that alcoholism in Russia is so horrible right now. Can't even find I gotta find a translated version of this article. That this is where's the quote? This is amazing. It's impossible not to drink here because everyone drinks there from morning to evening. There at 13 o'clock, the governor who plants a bottle of vodka in himself is an ordinary governor because he needs to pour stress somehow.
What?
He just dousing his stress in vodka.
Holy shit. That's not good.
Lord.
That's not good at all.
Yeah.
That's what they do. What they do.
Yeah. We'll come back in just one second. And hi, chat room. Hello, everybody. What's going on? Funny, after having you on Friday, today doesn't feel like a Saturday. It's very funny. I'm like, is it Wednesday already?
Yeah.
It was yesterday Saturday, and today was yeah. Is there vodka woke? Totally. What if they have nothing
Woke
but
vodka.
Absolute? Because Absolute is very well known in the glad circles for doing
very
big gay ad campaigns.
Oh, massive.
Absolute is Scandinavian, isn't it? I don't think Absolute is Russian.
Not Russian.
No, it isn't. But
No.
they, if they run out, where do they get it from? They have to start importing it.
Yeah, if you actually look at the number 2, I think it's stolen enough. As far as bar pour goes, it's a Russian.
I know I'm only on one day a week. I get it. I'm gonna have to jump.
So much of that vodka is
and start sawing something together.
He's potato.
The House Bar Show brought it out.
As
and a guitar note,
Steve
and progressive, and all. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the House Bar Show brought it out. And then
love the planes that land together. If that could only happen in real life.
The Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
All right, as a teetotaler, I will have to defer to you two gentlemen in terms of this appeal of this substance known as alcohol and its myriad of forms. I am baffled by even having a little of it. Makes no sense to me. But I understand that there are people in this world that consume lots of it. And apparently those people are Russian.
Love
it is so heavy an aspect of their consumption that they're in danger of running out at this point because of the war. And that the leadership is consuming so much vodka during the day that they are all effectively blinding drunk every night. Like it's like Michael Jackson and his anesthesiologist. They just chemical themselves to sleep because I guess they can find no other way. I mean, if I was Putin, the only way I could get to sleep is if I was knocked out because I'd be so paranoid that somebody would try to snuff me. And the only thing I would trust is the same bottle everybody else is drinking from, I guess. You wouldn't trust somebody to give you a shot, like Elvis or Hitler. What happens when that happens, Philip Bittner? What happens when they run out of alcohol? What's the DTs like in Russia?
They'll never run out of alcohol. They will find ways. They will. I mean, there were stories in the worst era of the kind of collapsing period of the Soviet Union where there were stories about people like drinking antifreeze and like distilling antifreeze so that they could get the alcohol from it.
Well, there was a prison wine.
Yeah, well, yeah. There was a famous anti-drinking campaign during, I believe it was the Brezhnev era, with a very famous poster with a guy refusing with his hand stretched out, refusing a shot of vodka. There are those who posit that the collapse of the Soviet Union was because they tried to control alcohol consumption, only be allotted a certain amount of vodka in any given day. Alcoholism is rampant. In Russia.
Rampant. It's actually
a lot. Yeah. Not just Russia. I mean, it's bad here too.
Right.
There's stuff called samagon in Russia, which is just basically anything that has a sugar in it that you can.
Do these not look like the things that
ferment
into alcohol?
Blue Origin uses
like
on. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, it's like basically moonshine. They're going to keep drinking because it's intrinsic to so much of their culture. It's not. They're never going to run out because it's just so much a part of their life. And,
I know I'm a dick for doing it.
They go 180 degrees the other direction, and they refuse any kind of alcohol whatsoever. But by and large, yeah, I mean start drinking at like in the morning, and you drink all day, and
their
mortality rate for men is like 51%.
We may have discovered one of the reasons why Russian society, industry, and everything other than digging stuff out of the ground and selling it on the open market has collapsed for the most part in Russia.
What is in here?
I'm gonna say it's probably that. I'm just gonna, not to be too much of a, an old like school marm from the 20s, but on a personal note, I'm like, maybe, I don't know, maybe dial it back. That you might find that life is worth living if you're not anesthetized against it at all times. That I just found that kind of amazing that was one of the big concerns that was coming out of the TASS agency, that they were literally talking about depleted. Think about that in a time of war. We've been talking about the United States like we're going to run out of ammunition because we're giving it all to Ukraine. That's the story that everybody's telling, which we're absolutely not, by the way. But that's the big story. What does it say about your society when your news service is saying we might run out of liquor?
Alcohol.
I just find that
we
amazing.
need alcohol.
You cannot buy alcohol in the Donbass. In Ukrainian-held Donbass, you cannot buy alcohol. And they do that for a reason. At the beginning of the war, when I was in Lviv, there were heavy restrictions on. Well, I mean, there was a prohibition in the beginning months of sale of alcohol. Now, of course, there was a black market if you really wanted to get your hands on it.
Right.
But the Ukrainians are smart enough to know that maybe at a time of war when we're being, bombed and all the rest of it,
how much
we
am I?
shouldn't be letting people buy vast amounts of vodka. So it's a problem here as well. It's not just Russia. There's a whole heavy drinking culture that it's you see it on the streets in Kiev. You guys who are. Just today, I took a nice little stroll around town. I saw some really interesting things. It gave me some. I posted a photograph. They repaved the main town here, the main street here in Kiev. That was neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that if you're on the verge of defeat.
No, boy.
That's a positive, forward-looking idea to repave your streets. But as I was walking around on a nice, lovely, sunny, one of the first sunny days of spring, there were guys out there drinking bottles, just openly, bottles of straight vodka, just sitting around. It's not just in Russia. I would not be terribly surprised if it's
I
worse
thought you were about to
in
say
Russia.
it's not just for breakfast anymore.
Well, that's the problem.
It's not just in Russia.
Who doesn't love vodka in there or
in their Fruit Loops?
Jesus.
In their Fruit Loops. In my Fruit Loops.
It is a real serious problem. But as I was going to say, I think it might be getting worse in Russia because they know that things are not going their way and things things look grim. So,
well, there.
Whoa!
So one of the other
470
stories,
it's
and
the
this
flow.
kind of relates to,
and this gets a really good flow.
Is that apparently during
megawatts
Vladimir Putin's visit to Mariupol,
boat doesn't hit it. Good. Okay, the boat. I'll have to move the
boat.
boat.
Melania Trump's
and I can actually do
plastic
this.
surgeon apparently, and became a completely different person. I don't know if you recall the multiple Melania storyline that was out for a little while, which I think there's reason to believe that that's true. But there was a series of people online.
Who always kept saying, yes, she looks like, because she never looked the same.
Build, which is a website news service, whatever.
6%.
Built, yeah. They went through and all the pictures and video of him there, and basically pointed out it's a different guy. It's completely a different guy. And I don't necessarily. I wouldn't go anywhere if I was him. Right? Especially someplace like that. You're going to save your trip from meeting Xi Jinping and others. But the pictures that they bring out are pretty extraordinary. Like, you look at both of them and you're like, yeah, it's not even close in some cases. The ears slant the wrong way, chin's way bigger, the nose is wrong. Like, it's, we see these kind of things on the web all the time because QAnon people think everybody's a clone. But in this particular case, he's known to use doubles, and he's this trip to Mariupol was. I mean, you contrast that with the fact that Zelensky's going. Zelensky goes to these places. and Putin is sending doubles, and it's become a rather like normal aspect of the story around him.
Yeah, I've been reluctant in the past to give too much oxygen to this kind of discourse because, I mean, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I get it.
it doesn't. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't change an awful lot.
Right.
It does show his mentality. It does show his where his head is at. I mean, we are hearing so much more and more about how psychologically and mentally he might be in a really bad place. A lack of trust in anybody, paranoia.
Again, alcoholism.
From everybody. if he's began drinking again, he's never been a heavy drinker. He's not like Yeltsin. Pardon me, but that could be part of it. But he's not doing well.
Right.
And I do think at this point it's undeniable he does use doubles.
Yeah, that's I just found that to be a particularly funny story. Like we heard about Saddam Hussein.
It is nutty.
Yeah.
and it does. Look, if he went to Mariupol or if he sent a double to Mariupol, it kind of the one thing it does actually do, and you're absolutely right to point that out, Al. The fact that Zelensky actually goes to places. I mean, Zelensky was in Bakhmut 48 hours before he was on the floor of Congress addressing, the U.S. Congress. That's gutsy. That is, that is a morale boost, and it also sends a signal. Whereas, if indeed 100% it is proven that Putin used the double to go to Mariupol, it shows that he doesn't feel as secure about visiting a place like Mariupol,
right?
Which was contested for months, has been subdued, I'll say, and there are a lot of Russians that have been brought in there to build a kind of a Potemkin village to show that look, we're great when we conquer.
Yeah, you abduct all the locals and replace them with your people. It worked for the Han Chinese, in China throughout the entire western part of the country, and then even in Tibet. We have to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to use the word no one should ever say.
Oh, my God, the N-word. The N-word.
Because that's how you always...
Kind of like woke.
You say you're not supposed to say
something. Kind of like woke, the new N-word for them because they can't say the N-word. So now they use woke.
For Philip and via Johnny Million, he will be farming them during the break. We'll be back.
Maybe I'll just replace the N-word with woke.
Trump always says the N-word when he's talking about nuclear bombs or whatever.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
He totally does. But I can't even do it in jest. I could talk about it in reference, but even like I find it creepy when I even am like mocking him saying it. And I'm glad.
Because what's he eliciting? What do you think of when
he's making people
when
real
he says
happy
the N-word?
Yep.
It's.
I think he's trying to excite a bunch of his followers that he's actually going to say it.
Oh, that's what they want. Please, that's exactly what they want. 1,000%.
So, there was a rather big business deal signed around nuclear energy between Ukraine and which is Energoatom and a U.S. Company out of Camden, New Jersey, it's the easy part to remember. Holtec, that's what it was. Holtec Industrial Holtec International. Signed a deal to build 20 SMR 160 nuclear reactors in Ukraine. That's the replacement for Russian oil and gas entirely for the next century for Europe. That's it. That's what they're doing. That's what's going ahead.
It's the dumbest thing that any Russian leader has done in a long time.
And that's saying a lot.
and that's saying a lot. It's done. It's over. I mean, Ukraine is leaving Russia, and it's not coming back. It's going to be a European country. It will not have the schizophrenia of Russia, and the plans are being laid, and
We're coming back in
it's
20.
going to drive
Thank
the
you.
Russians nuts. It's going to drive the Russians so nuts.
Yep.
This is Damian Perdue of Think Theory Radio. Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program,
Mega Worldwide.
New one every break. I was so excited.
Okay, I
You
think I'm
want
gonna
more,
put
Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCBT 820. Hoo-yah!
Welcome back to the show. So, we were just talking during the break about how when Trump makes that N-word reference, it just creeps us all out. It's just so gross. And I think the whole thing's predicated on Trump just wanting his audience to think one day
I'm gonna say it. I'm
And
gonna go woke.
The reality is that there's a group
Well,
of people in his
non-woke.
audience that would cheer so loudly
go
if he just said it.
N-word.
But then he dodges out and brings up nuclear power. He brings up specifically nuclear weapons because that's for some reason, he wants to pretend that he didn't, have this basically game between him and Kim Jong-un where they
Right.
were threatening each other with buttons and little rocket man and blah, blah,
Little
blah.
dick
But,
shit.
all of a sudden when it's another president in there, if anybody
Forgive me, but it was
if
just little
another
dick
leader
shit, you
brings
mean?
it up, suddenly it's our fault. It's just goofy. But in the process, one of the reasons why we're in
Little
this
dick
mess
shit.
and why Russia's been able to finance itself for a very long time is because of the oil and gas industry providing energy for most of Europe.
Or as
And
the
a
AM
deal was
radio
struck
used to put it,
by
short
Energoatom,
man.
which is a Ukrainian state energy company.
Never forget that.
And
Oh my
Oltec
God, short dick
International
man
this
became
week,
short
which is
man.
they have a British office, but they are centered in Camden, New Jersey, of all places, to build 20 nuclear reactors inside Ukraine over the next, I guess, decade. Also elsewhere, probably not all 20 of them are going there. Probably 10 of them, and then a few others in areas that Ukraine will partner in the building of them, because once we get good at building these things, we can build one in France, is the theory, I think, for both energy groups. But this single act, as much as people bristle at nuclear power, and if you look at what the Swedes and Norwegians have done with their nuclear power, they're pretty good at getting rid of their waste by burrowing down into the earth so far that there's way nastier stuff than nuclear waste below them. Far enough down where you can put the spent stuff down there. These will be built, in theory, on the same general principle. But 20 of them, this will replace the entire energy needs of Europe that they were getting from Europe, perhaps part of even what they're getting from Norway and Finland as well, are drawn from there. This is basically, Ukraine turns into an energy farm if this it happens. Phase 1 has been signed off by the State Department. They have okayed it. 20 SMR 160 nuclear reactors. That's the biggest group of nuclear reactors built in, ever, I think, but certainly the largest number since they started building them 50, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to unpack with this, and so. Ukraine has a muddled history with nuclear power, given that this is the territory where one of the world's worst nuclear accidents happened in Chernobyl. That is very much still living memory here in Ukraine. The fact that one of Europe's single largest reactor is here in Zaporozhye.
Yep.
But then also there are very sophisticated, intelligent nuclear power technicians here who know what they're doing. There is potentially the desire to move away from Soviet model nuclear reactors to more modern reactors. And then, of course, there's the European question of energy and their energy, their energy needs, and their whole history of nuclear power, where one country would abolish using nuclear power stations, but they would be on the grid with a neighboring
company,
nuclear power. So you're really not engaging in nuclear power.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the case here with 22 of these plants. But at the end of the day, what also is important to recognize is that this is a clear indication that everybody is recognizing that the future of Ukraine lies in Europe.
All right, we're still doing
Russian power sphere. Right. This is that Europe and Ukraine, as was stated yesterday.
Stop building. Sit around.
Everybody's looking at
wait.
The fact that
hold on.
This war is over. Whatever it's going to look like. That there will be a nation state called Ukraine that will be part of Europe. It will not be tied to Russia. It will have its own identity. It will have its own, self-determination and its own place on the world stage. And it won't be just like Russia light. It's just kind of what everybody used to think about it in Ukraine. It will have its own identity. That's what I take away when I think about the prospect of that, and other things as well.
Right. There's I
think it's important.
Right. There is one of the biggest actions we can possibly do in the world for decarbonization getting away from fossil fuels.
Getting away from
it
fossils.
Doesn't involve the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people, is nuclear power. There is no other way around it in the needs of the modern world. Period. End of story.
As a temporary bridge, I'm not arguing that. I will say that that's true.
Innovate our
we can
way
do
out
it,
of it,
but I don't think it needs to be huge nuclear. The problem is we can't do these big, huge nuclear plants. We need to figure out the micro
We're going to overtake the amount of carbon we're putting into the environment.
What we really need to do is get it to all renewables, and we can do it.
Electrifies itself as India electrifies
especially
itself, China electrifies
if we get to the copper.
To balance out
copper
the use
version
of coal and other fossil fuels in those countries, which short of
solar cell,
them, we are not going to stop them from doing.
Which will cut the price in half
power is the
again.
only way to do it, and that's
coming.
Shocked by
within the next 3 years
of this around that plan, where they were like, "Yep, we're serious about decarbonization."
Because what that does is that puts
going to replace
a power plant on everyone's house,
effectively nullifying
easily,
the
quickly,
work of
with
Russia
as little as two
as a country,
panels.
as an energy producer.
I'm not joking.
All of Europe.
If there's two things that may happen relatively quickly in the next few months that actually would change the entire thing, and that's how that solar cell. The amount, the percentage that solar cell puts out is basically,
when you're ready to,
if everything goes right, in the next 3 years, it will go up from 25% to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 48 to 45.
Huge Twitter
45 to 48, maybe even 49%.
This was a huge Twitter storm
and become much cheaper. I'm not joking. The copper part and the perovskite part become as easily put together as they're talking, and it really could happen.
Man, if you didn't do things
very
like
large
Ukraine, we would leave you to your own devices.
Production.
Nobody wants.
It would make a huge difference in the way that we actually generate power.
We don't.
Because every day would be an over generation of power
people are coming
to the point where we would be going, hold on, whoa.
Yeah. And if we get to a point where the Europeans are not.
And we will get there.
I
do truly believe we will get there.
We might be able to get to a point and be like, you just do what you want, man. Just do it on your side of the border.
It is
Don't
amazing.
mess with anybody else, and you work it out yourself.
Well, I would argue,
but that ticks them off. That ticks them off because how dare you ignore us?
Again, like I said, if we really wanted to, we could generate all the power we need right now for the entire the entire United States.
No, we'd ignore you.
Off of what we could be generated just around Austin, Texas.
But I would argue that Russia is basically the world's school shooter in a lot of ways. It's a workplace shooter.
38 square miles, less than the size of San Francisco.
Some people will blame the kind of like mass violence we see in the United States on.
It wouldn't have to be
mental
concentrated
health
in one
the
spot.
abstract. And we can debate about whether narcissism, like malignant
funny part is,
narcissism, is a mental health issue, is a
Australia's starting
characteristic of
it.
a person's ethic.
And I
or
got a
mental
feeling once they get it in place,
at some other time,
and it starts
I
paying
would
off
argue,
the way
though,
the
that
last two
both,
things that they put in on Australia.
for this to be
See,
true,
people
it
seem to
either
have
work.
forgotten that the
And
first battery
it is all about
went
I will
in
not
on
be
Australia
ignored.
and has paid
My
for
right
itself how many
to
times
be,
over already?
Outraged and angry and
So if this
seen
solar plant
and,
that they're putting
and
in,
honored
which is
and
only going to be
revered or
37
feared,
square miles,
is more important
and
than
we'll
your
put out
right
enough
to live.
megawatts for an
And there's a
entire
lot of
Queensland
similarities
area
in
at
the
certain
the
points.
worst kind of
It's going to change the world.
sort of suicide bomb kind of reactions that you see from people as well. It's based in the same ego. People will say
Because
it's their
they were gonna be
religion. People will
selling that
say
power, too,
it's their government
beyond Queensland.
system. It's a myriad of other things. But in reality, when it comes down to it and the single person is making the decision, it is because they believe they deserve a bigger slice of the pie than they have worked to actually earn on a major scale, and they're too lazy to try. And so in the case of,
Daytime
Putin and that
only
ilk, I honestly think they have more in common with workplace shooters in their decision-making process than they do with, Genghis Khan claiming land again. That he believes.
We don't have the time, especially with the questions, because I love getting questions. We don't have the time to go into it in detail, but as someone who lived there and has studied Russia for the past 3 decades, a huge problem with Russia's diplomatic efforts and its sense of self and what it does and its motivations is built on an inferiority complex. It's very difficult to get into. It's very complex. And if you want to talk about it another time, I'd love to. But just know that there's a huge inferiority complex when it comes to Russia, because they always juxtapose themselves. They always judge themselves on others, and it's like, well, no, judge yourself on what you do.
It's the politics of incels. Let's grab a question if we can, because I'll eat up the time in the conversation.
The first question is undeniable.
We've
Everybody
got
wants to hear about the
tram
new
going
behind
through the
Phil,
entire
and some
city
people want him to straighten it a bit.
Oh, how bad.
It is a little.
It's actually not the painting; it's my camera. So so this is a painting. A painting by my favorite Russian Ukrainian. He was born in Kharkiv, outside of Kharkiv. A guy by the name of Ilya Repin. He painted in the mid 19th century. I've had for many months the painting of the death of the Tsarevich and Ivan the Terrible. This is called the barge pullers on the river Volga, and it is, to me, a perfect picture of a very serious problem within Russia, and one of the reasons why Ukraine will never again live this kind of lifestyle, because it shows the masses. They're pulling the barge, which is the Russian ship of state, with the elites over there on the nice, clean, crispy barge there with the Russian flag, and then you have these dirty, impoverished, guys who are just pulling it up the river with a strap. The Russians know this is part of, and maybe I can tie this into the inferiority complex a little bit, because the Russians are aware of their own inadequacies. They are aware of how their state doesn't work properly unless it is despotic.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Which
put
is
enough
crazy.
thought into them, or if you
That just
get
makes
to be
no
friends
sense.
with them enough, and they get to a point where they feel that they can trust you, they themselves will tell you the problem. I mean, Ripon is showing it right here. He's showing exactly why the Ukrainians refuse to live under the thumb of Moscow, and the Russians don't themselves. And I'm going to say something controversial, but I'm going to stand by it. They're too darn lazy to change what they know the change.
Not gonna argue
We're
that.
nihilists, Lebowski. We believe in nothing.
Sorry, I've always said that. I found that white people are
let's take a break.
very
Let's come
lazy,
back with more
except for if
questions.
they're
It's the
screamed
Health
at to
Program
go do
Mega
stuff
worldwide.
that they hate. You can make them go do shit if they hate it, but
I think
really do shit for
I think
like society and life.
8%
No.
of nihilism
No.
is emotional, psychological, and intellectual laziness.
Thank you. But it works.
That's it.
I mean, and they always.
This is also true of libertarianism.
Right, but it still has a great following.
What recently happened with
look at its following.
So there's a dissident by the name of Vladimir Kara-Murza. He's never going to get real power in Russia, but he was an advocate for kind of liberal democracy and change in Russia. They've just thrown him in the slammer for 25 years.
What I'm going to now do is
for daring to say I don't.
Because we are now big enough. I think we need one.
And there's been a lot of condemnation of that sentencing. And Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the foreign ministry, came out and she didn't address the actual sentencing of Kara-Murza. What she did was say, yeah, but look what you did with Assange, and look what you did with Snowden, and look what you did with all your political, we
didn't do anything with them. We didn't do anything with Snowden or Assange. They both, Snowden fled the country, and everything that's been done to him ever since, including patting his nest and taking care of him up until the day I believe they snuffed him and replaced him with a chatbot on Twitter, has been the Russians. Glenn Greenwald's crowd flew him out of the country.
No, absolutely.
He didn't face justice. Chelsea Manning's still alive.
The point I'm trying to make is that Zakharova, when addressing the accusations of an abhorrent sentencing and abuse of power by the Russian state, doesn't say, well, no, you don't understand fully why we sentenced Kara-Murza. This was our thinking, and this is why we decided this. No. She goes and does this. Yeah, well, what about you guys?
Stand by.
It's like, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not talking about other guys. We're talking about you.
I am happy you are happy. Let us
stand by, he said.
The weather is cloudy.
Did you guys not hear that? Stand by. Oh, see, if I was their producer, they would hate me. Well, because I know how I would be in their ear, so I'd go, stand by.
Because isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you?
Do remember I do audio and visual for a living.
Smiling, you are smiling.
Plus computers. So there's that little way of getting you all the channels you need. It does mean having to have a lot here, too. Cereal. And multiple IPs.
Well, I do have I do have some
external IPs.
Good news. It's bad news for Republicans, but it's
and a very good load balancer in my home.
Citizens of all stripes.
Not F5 level, but
a
good
dozen
load.
U.S. states hit record low unemployment forever last month. Under the presidency of Joe Biden, and interestingly enough, in terms of the states that you're going to try and gin up some anti-federal government angst for yourself, it's difficult. One of them is Arizona, obviously, because Arizona with its 9 new chip factories. You're welcome.
Put a couple of chip factories in there. You're going to get a bunch of engineers coming in.
Wisconsin, Arkansas, Mississippi,
because actually
Alabama,
that's not
Ohio,
a bad place
Kentucky,
to go
West
live.
Virginia and Maine,
it really is,
as well as I think Rhode Island.
It's a little red. That's
Rhode
because
Island.
of the weather.
All
People
of
love
them
to retire into that kind of a weather.
It's just a little bit.
All
all reached a level of unemployment never seen before.
Giving us shit.
I think South Dakota, Nebraska, and North Dakota, their rate is 2%. And in states like Wisconsin, which hit 3% for the first time ever, Florida's at 3% as well. But it had already hit that years ago. It's been around that. Back, by the way, the reason Florida has a way lower one was because my grandfather was responsible partly for bringing soldiers home after World War II, and relocating them and letting them settle for a bit, get the help they need. Some of them needed mental counseling, and some of them needed physical therapy, and some of them just didn't have a place to live after they came back. So they went to these apartments that the government set up in Florida, and some of them just stayed, but they all had jobs while they were there. So there's a period where, like post-World War II, and into the 60s, that's why Florida was this kind of pristine, easy living place, because there were a bunch of people down there that never had to pay any rent and were good people who worked very hard and were respected by their neighbors. So it was a nice mix of humans, and Florida benefited from that. I think they had a 1.5% unemployment at that point. It was like minuscule. It was crazy. Anyway, that's really good news. If you are running on a prosperity and peace concept, as far as the Biden administration.
And we are.
It's really.
Yeah, we got another year and a half, roughly, before the elections, and those things are only going to get stronger and stronger.
That's right.
In my estimation. My story. Yep. My story. I'm torn about my story between three, and I think I know the one, but I'm going to mention that there's a great video that's trending of Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. They had a band showed up, and they did a dance party on the front lines, which, is kind of like, if you guys are facing, if they really think that they're imminent defeat or whatever, you don't have dance parties on the front line. The other one is I'm about to put out a vlog about a really interesting guy who's lived in LA, learned how to do sushi and ramen, and then he came back to Ukraine, started a chain of restaurants. He's extremely successful. War started. He took his stills and he's feeding Ukrainian soldiers. So look for that vlog on my channel soon. But I think the story really stands out to me, and it's not a happy ending story in the way of a humorous happy ending, but it is, I think, gives an insight to this whole dispute about the various Orthodox churches here and who holds allegiance to whom. There was a transfer that was initiated between Ukraine and Russia, in which a single Ukrainian Orthodox church member, now that's the church in Ukraine that is still beholden to the system in Moscow, a single priest was swapped for 28 soldiers. Whoa. So the argument that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is some sort of independent body and not beholden to Moscow kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
Wow.
You don't trade that's a Victor Boot like trade.
Yeah.
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 I mean, again.
Worse. Far worse.
Yes. So
Griner, I was happy to see Griner go, even though I had my issues with Boot. This is a clear indication that Moscow values this one priest.
Yeah, I meant scale-wise. Yeah.
Why that might be.
Yeah, I just meant on the scale of it. Like, if that's the kind of person you are willing to trade that much for, that says a lot.
Exactly.
And I don't know if Johnny Million, other than he has twitch.tv/it's Johnny Million and youtube.com/it's Johnny Million.
It's Johnny Million.
Right? Am I right?
It's Johnny Million.
Yeah, those are good ones.
Good.
Other than that, that's
all right. We are going
he got to go see King's X last
I'll be off
week,
at 11
and,
also.
And Ty Tabor yelled at him from the stage and said, "That's Johnny Million," and that's a really beautiful thing. And because we love us some King's X,
and then I got to chat with him forever.
It's a great thing. They're good people. I've had lovely conversations.
Big fans. You have no idea. Ty could not stop singing your praises.
Oh, he like that dude. The magic that is in his fingers. I feel like we just need to, if we could set up some sort of a generator off of it, we could spread peace and music throughout the entire world. I honestly believe that. He means so well, and he plays so well in the same human being. That's an amazing. Those are two amazing characteristics to have in a being, and that's why that's why I like him so much. I like, you know how close I am with Doug, and I love Doug, and Jerry as a drummer. For those of you that aren't King's X fans, I don't know what's broken in your head, and I hope it heals.
Sorry.
And Jerry's just way of playing the drums is just always gorgeous to me, as well as sort of perfect timing.
YouTube,
and get back into my
their
music,
performance of Dogman on the Jon Stewart show.
Yes.
Maybe one of these times, what we'll do is we'll actually listen to a show while I actually produce a
love him across
tune
the board.
or
But
two.
the thing about Ty,
I've done that too.
As a human being, is that he means well by the earth, and I genuinely mean that. Not in somebody who's just somebody who pats themselves on the back for being a slacktivist or any of those people who's like really voices some sort of idea, but he actually is that feeling. That makes sense. Yeah, and it shows in his music, and I think it's beautiful. Also, by the way, I will say that
you still need to check out Ted Lasso, Hal.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
yes.
I would argue
that so wonderful.
Yes, I've heard good things, but
such a good show.
I'll get it there at some point.
It's so positive. Such a great thing.
Johnny, do you
Less
have
cynicism, more positivity?
That's right. Hey, that's what I'm here for. Optimistic stoicism, baby. This is what we do here. Come on now.
Well, there's a quote that's very important in Ted Lasso, and I'm going to try and remember here. Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
So Jesus said something along those lines. There was a little more direct, but I get you. At some point, is Ted Lasso going to walk on water at the end of the final episode, like being there?
Oh, sorry. I know. You know what?
That's great. Yeah. I think that would be really
I
funny
wish.
if there was a being there ending for Ted Lasso. It would drive everyone crazy, but I think
absolutely insane.
It would be, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And also, by the way, along with those horrible jobs numbers I told you about earlier, where a bunch of red states are doing better than they thought they would, and setting record low unemployment, wages have also increased, and earnings. This is from Bloomberg. Better than feared earnings has analysts rethinking projections. Feared. This is just tells you how Wall Street
better than feared.
Like, it's great unless it's terrible. Roughly 20% of the S&P 500 is reported, and 77% of them topped estimates. And everybody's arguing where their estimates that they were predicting too low. It's really hard to sell that America's going down the toilet the way Trump wants to when that's the genuine news. When in Montana they have a record low unemployment for the first time in their history, and it's not because a bunch of people left the state.
Nope.
It's for real.
It's for real.
And it's not. And those are mostly energy jobs and agricultural jobs. Exactly. And everybody's working double shifts.
Exactly.
It's just going to be a hard sell in about a year. It really is. They're not going to, it's all going to be social stuff. It's all going to be like they're trying to trans our kids. That's all they're going to have left. It's basically all they have right now. That's why you hear so much about it. And in its own way, but for the fact that trans people have to hear this crap all the time, it's good news for the country overall, because when your enemy only has that to go on, and it's so feather light and weak and stupid and gross, you are not getting to the heartland issues. These are not kitchen table issues. And I think the same thing goes with as Ukraine plays out over the next, 4 months. The next 4 months are going to be pivotal.
Please don't crash.
Tune in
Please
every
don't
Saturday.
crash. Please don't
Philip
crash.
will be joining us and keeping us up to date on that. And then on Wednesdays, we'll have a midweek pick-me-up when he's available and he's not on the road or in some undisclosed location. And, of course, you can always see my live stream on infotainmentwars.com or at twitch.tv/Hal Sparks or on the Facebook page. Like, subscribe, support us via the Patreon page, patreon.com/Hal Sparks. And then what else? Thumbs up on your way out the door. And
we'll see you
guys
next week.
on Monday.
Thank
Thanks
you,
very much.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chicago.
See you next week.
Mm-hmm.